My brother tried to end his life the day we lost our home. One bad trade, that's all it took. We thought we were investing for our future, but in just 24 hours, everything we owned disappeared. My name is Aaron. I'm 32 years old. We grew up in a beaten-up semi in a Manchester suburb, the kind of house with sagging gutters, a lawn that never quite recovers in spring, and a front door that sticks when it rains. It was our father's pride. He laid the bricks himself in his spare time between shifts at the factory. When he died, that house felt like the only part of him that stayed. Michael, my older brother, was always the kind of man people noticed. He had that easy confidence, the quick laugh that made strangers relax. He was the one who fixed the car, patched the roof, and explained the bills in a way that sounded like a plan. He taught himself little things: how to swap the shelf in the kitchen, how to coax a stubborn lawnmower back to life. He liked numbers. He liked the sound of being right. When the recession hit and work got quiet, Michael started talking about trading. Not in the complicated, academic way traders do. He talked about it like a chance, a way to speed things up. "We won't have to grind forever, Aaron," he told me, tapping his phone like it contained a tiny miracle. "Just a few months, then we're clear." He showed me screenshots. I remember them because of the grin that came with them. Little green numbers, up arrows, a balance that looked like climbable steps. £3,200 today, £6,800 by the weekend. He used apps I'd heard of, eToro sometimes, Binance for coins he called volatile, and a smaller platform called Plus 500 for CFDs when he wanted high returns quickly. He called them by name like talismans. The apps made it look clean and simple: a swipe here, a tap there, and suddenly, profit. Friends at the pub congratulated him. Mum cried when he bought a new kettle, said he was finally looking after us. At first, I liked watching him win. Who wouldn't? He bought Mum a proper microwave instead of the battered one with duct tape. He paid the council tax 1 month early, and he promised me we'd finally replace Dad's rusty toolbox. The house got fixed in tiny places. For a while, everything felt like a small miracle we could touch. But miracles have a smell. They smell like someone else's breath. They smell like the late-night glow of a laptop screen and the way a person looks when they're waiting for a number to fall the way they've prayed it will. Michael started to live in that blue light. He slept during the day, walked the dog at midnight, and guarded his phone like it was the map to a treasure chest. He never explained the loans. He called them bridges. Said he was using the house as leverage, a temporary thing, a way to borrow against tomorrow's gains. He told us it would be fine, a short-term loan secured against a portion of the property, nothing to worry about. He used the word portfolio like a promise. "One win, and everything's paid off," he said. "One win, and Mum can breathe again." I asked him to show me the paperwork. He smiled and put his hand on my shoulder. "Brother," he said, "these are grown-up things. You don't need to worry." I wanted to be the kind of brother who trusts. I wanted to be the kind of son who supported the man trying to save us. So, I trusted. I watched him on weekends, celebrated his little payouts on the apps, and helped carry the heavy things he insisted on carrying himself. There were signs small and maddening. The phone number that called at 3 a.m. and hung up. The envelope with a bank logo shoved under a plate. The way he covered his laptop when Mum walked past the living room. "It's work," he'd say. "It's complicated." Complicated can be a protective cloak for guilt. I began to notice how he blinked when he lied, one of those tiny, human tells. But I told myself the same story he wanted me to hear. He was smart. He was ready. He had the plan. Then one evening, he sat us down properly. Not in the kitchen where Mum hummed and pretended not to listen, but at the table with the light low and the kids' toys pushed to the corner. He had papers. Not too many, just enough. "I've taken a loan," he said, and for a second I thought he was going to laugh. He didn't. "I borrowed against the house to fund the trades. I put in the deposits. I can pay it back fivefold. You'll see." He told us a number. It was shocking and oddly precise. £120,000. When Mum made a sound I'd never heard, a small, high gasp that stopped time, Michael's voice softened. "It's everything, I know. But listen. 1 solid month and this is done. I'll turn this into a future." He pressed my hand. "Trust me." I wanted to trust him. I did. But after he left the room, the house felt smaller. That night, I sat on the sofa, and tried to imagine what £120,000 looked like money written out, piled in bundles, worn leather wallets. It didn't belong in our house, where Dad had left us a mortgage and a garden and the smell of his cigarettes on the porch. It felt foreign, like a new kind of sin. From then on, the screen became the altar of our lives. Michael would show me good days. Look, £5,000, profit today. And then, the next day, the mood would tilt. He'd speak differently, quieter, his sentences full of almosts and justs. The apps started to look less like promise and more like a mirror. eToro messages, Binance updates, and plus 500 notifications pinged more often and with a sharper tone. There were nights when he fell asleep mid-text, the phone burning his face with blue light. I used to wake up and watch him sleep, and want to shake him awake, make him stop. Once, when he was gone for too long, I snuck onto his laptop. I know that's a line a lot of people tell themselves they'd never cross. But worry is a canary. It makes you do things you swore you wouldn't. The account looked like a house of cards, screenshots of transient highs, then sudden red numbers, then a dark message that said, "Margin call initiated." I didn't understand the term fully, but I understood the feeling of a warning. On the side of the screen was an email from the lender, polite, precise, and final. "Please be advised your loan repayment is due. Failure to arrange payments will result in enforcement action." I closed the laptop and slid it back with hands that felt foreign. I wanted to confront him, to rage, to cry, to force him to explain, but I also wanted to protect the hope he'd offered Mum. So I waited. I told myself he'd fix it. He promised he would. He always promised. A month later, there was another letter. The lender had sent a stronger one. The amount owed had grown by penalties. Enforcement action now had a phone number that glowed on the paper like an accusation. When I asked him about it, he laughed too loudly and said, "They're bluffing. They always bluff." I wanted to believe that laugh. I wanted to hold on to his confidence because giving it up felt like watching the map of our lives tear in two. That night, I lay awake thinking of simple things: Dad's toolbox, Mum's laugh, the way Michael once taught me to change a tire in the rain. The house we had was more than bricks. It was a ledger of all the small, honest things people do to keep a life together. And now, quietly, a number written on a paper sat like an omen under our roof. I didn't know then how fast things would fall apart. I didn't know the sound of a bailiff's knock or the way a house looks when the people inside it stop believing in tomorrow. All I knew was my brother telling me, with absolute conviction, that 1 month would change everything. And I believed him. For now, that's all that mattered. I used to think you could feel disaster coming like a storm you sense before the sky changes. But the truth is, most of the time, it's quiet at first. For weeks after Michael took the loan, things almost seemed normal. He still made tea in the mornings, still called Mum Queenie when she grumbled about the cold, still told me he was nearly there. He even bought me new shoes one weekend, said, "You'll need them when we move to the better side of town." That was how he worked. Hope first, facts later. But then, I started noticing the silences, long ones, the kind that stretch across the room and feel like another person standing there, watching. Michael stopped talking during breakfast. His phone never left his hand. And when it buzzed, he'd flinch tiny, sharp movements like he was bracing for a hit. One night, I came home late from a shift at the warehouse and found him at the table, face lit blue from the laptop. His hands were shaking. The numbers on the screen were red. I didn't understand what they meant, but I understood the feeling. I asked, "Everything all right?" He didn't look up, just whispered, "It dipped. It'll recover. It has to." There was a beer can by his elbow and another on the floor. His jaw was tight, eyes bloodshot, the kind of tired that doesn't come from work. That's when I realized he wasn't trading anymore. He was gambling with reality. The next morning, he acted fine again, made breakfast, kissed Mum on the head, said, "Market's turning. You'll see." I wanted to believe him. We all did. Belief is cheaper than truth, that's why people buy it. But the letters kept coming. First one, then another. Thick envelopes from lenders with polite fonts and sharp deadlines. Outstanding balance. Final reminder. Immediate payment required. He'd grab them before Mum could read them, tear them quietly, and tuck them into the bin. When I confronted him one night, really confronted him, he snapped. "I know what I'm doing, Aaron," he shouted. Do you think I'd risk our home without a plan? You think I'm stupid?" His voice cracked. He slammed the chair, breathing hard, then whispered, "Just give me time." And that was the last real conversation we had for a while. After that, he stopped eating with us, slept in short bursts. Sometimes I'd hear him talking to himself, saying things like, come on, push up, just a bit more." He'd pace the kitchen barefoot, muttering numbers like prayers. One afternoon, I caught him standing in front of the window, staring out at nothing. His laptop was open behind him, a sea of red graphs spilling across the screen. He turned to me slowly, eyes hollow. "Do you know what a liquidation looks like?" he asked. I said, "No." He smiled, a small, broken thing. "It looks like watching your life disappear in half a second." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to hug him, but he looked like someone who'd forgotten what touch was for. The next few days were strange quiet again. Too quiet. Then one morning, Mum called me into the kitchen. Her hands were shaking as she held a letter. "They're taking the house," she whispered. It was from the lender, the formal notice. Legal tone, heavy language, the kind that doesn't care who you are. Notice of repossession proceedings. I remember the sound of her voice breaking on the word repossession. It didn't sound human, more like the sound of something old finally cracking. Michael didn't come home that night. His phone went straight to voicemail. I tried his friends, no one had seen him. The next morning, a text came through. Just one line. "Don't look for me. I messed everything up." My stomach turned cold. Mum was crying on the sofa, and I felt like a child again, useless and scared. We called the police. They found his car 2 days later, by the cliffs near Scarborough. He was alive, barely. They said he'd been sitting in the driver's seat for hours before someone spotted him. Engine off. Door unlocked. He'd written something on a folded receipt. I just wanted to fix it. When I saw him in the hospital, he looked smaller. Not thinner, smaller. Like someone had taken parts of him away. He said, "Tell Mum I'm sorry." I said, "You can tell her yourself." He nodded. But he didn't. He couldn't look at her when she came in. A few weeks later, we were out of the house. The furniture went first sold for cash. Then the walls emptied, one frame at a time. The day we left, Mum stood at the front door and whispered something I'll never forget. She said, "This house didn't fail us. We failed each other." Now, when people talk about risk and opportunity, I think of Michael of screens and promises and a man who thought he could outsmart gravity. Because the truth is, you never really lose everything at once. You lose it one hope at a time. People say, time heals everything. But whoever said that never had to watch their brother walk through life carrying a ghost. After the repossession, we moved into a rented flat on the edge of town. One of those buildings that always smells faintly of damp carpet and old takeaway. The walls were thin, you could hear your neighbors fighting through them, muffled, like distant thunder. It wasn't home. It was a pause button. Mum stopped talking much after that. She'd sit near the window, staring out like the old house might appear again if she waited long enough. She still called Michael my boy, even when she didn't say his name. Sometimes I'd catch her standing over his empty chair at breakfast, whispering under her breath. Michael? He changed. The man who once filled every room with sound barely spoke anymore. He went to therapy, caught suggestion after the attempt, and started working part-time at a local warehouse. Same place I did, actually. But he'd keep to himself lunch breaks in silence. No more phones, no more charts, no more green or red numbers flashing across a screen. If you saw him from the outside, you'd think he was healing. But when I looked at him, I saw a man who didn't believe he deserved to. Once, he told me, every time I close my eyes I see the graphs fall. Over and over, like they never stopped. I told him, "That's in the past, Mike." He smiled, barely. "You don't lose that kind of past, Aaron. You just learn how to breathe around it." I didn't have an answer to that. He started visiting the old neighborhood sometimes. One afternoon, I went with him. We parked near the end of our old street. The house had new owners, a couple with a bright blue car and flower pots by the window. The front door had been repainted red. Michael stood there for a long time, didn't say a word. Then he whispered, "He'd hate this color." "Who?" I asked. "Dad." That hit me harder than I expected. Because he was right. Dad would have hated it, not because of the color, but because we weren't the ones behind it anymore. You learn a lot when you lose a home. You learn how much of your life is built on illusion, the walls, the furniture, the pride. And when all of that's stripped away, what's left isn't shame. It's truth. Raw, bare, and often too heavy to carry. Michael tried to make amends. Sold his car. Gave every penny to Mum. She took it but never spent it. Just kept it in an envelope, tucked inside her drawer like a quiet apology she didn't know what to do with. A few months later, the landlord raised the rent. I picked up extra shifts. Mum started sewing for neighbors again. Michael began walking to work every day, even when it rained. Said the bus felt too easy. Maybe he thought the walk was punishment, or maybe he just needed the distance. There was this one night, maybe 8 months after everything fell apart. We were sitting on the balcony, 2 cheap beers between us, the city humming below. He said, "You ever think we'll get it back? The house?" I said, "No, but maybe that's okay." He nodded slowly, then said something I've never forgotten. "Money doesn't ruin people, Aaron. Desperation does. I thought I was fixing us, but I was really just trying to fix myself." I didn't respond, because what do you say to that? Sometimes silence is the only language left when you've both run out of words. He's better now, I think. He volunteers at a community center, helps kids learn budgeting, how not to fall for online scams, how to recognize greed before it bites. He never says the word trading anymore, but I can tell from the way his eyes soften when someone mentions risk that he remembers. Always will. And me? I still check the market news sometimes. Not because I care about the numbers, I care about what they represent. All those people staring at their screens, hoping for one green line to save them. If you've ever been there, or known someone who has, you'll understand what I mean when I say this. The worst kind of loss isn't when the world takes something from you. It's when you give it away, believing you can control the cost. So, yeah, that's my story. About my brother. About a house. About the price we paid for hope. Hey, if you're still here, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this, real ones. The kind that don't end perfectly, but still find a way to mean something. 3 years passed. And sometimes, when I look back, it feels like it all happened in a different lifetime. Like the house, the shouting, the panic, belonged to someone else's story. Life didn't suddenly get better. It just got quieter. And in that quiet, we learned how to live again. Mum eventually stopped sitting by the window. She started gardening in the tiny shared courtyard behind our flat, a few pots, a crooked fence, but she smiled again. I'd come home and find her humming while trimming dead leaves. It was small, but it was something. Michael stayed with us for another year before moving out. He rented a small place near the river. Nothing fancy, cracked tiles, old wallpaper, one window that didn't close properly. But it was his. He called it a fresh start. Sometimes I'd visit after work, and we'd sit outside with coffee mugs, watching the water roll by. He seemed lighter, not happy, exactly, but at peace in a way I hadn't seen before. He talked about writing a book once, something about recovery, risk, and regret. Said he wanted people to know what losing everything really felt like. Not the movie version, the real one. The one where you wake up every morning with a weight on your chest that you just carry, because there's no other choice. But he never wrote it. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe living differently was enough. One evening, I found him standing outside the community center after closing. The lights were off, but he lingered there, staring at the door. I asked him why. He said, "I like knowing it's still here, a place where mistakes don't end things, they start them over." That sentence stuck with me, because that's what our story had become, not an ending, but a long, quiet restart. We never got the house back, but we did buy a small one, years later together. Me, Mum, and Michael. A cottage on the edge of town with white walls and uneven floors. The kind of place where you can hear the rain hit the roof and actually feel safe. The day we moved in, Michael stood in the doorway with a box in his hands. He didn't move for a minute, just looked around, slow, steady, like he was afraid to believe it was real. Then he said softly, "It's not the same house." And I said, "No, it's better." He laughed. Not the loud, easy laugh he used to have, but a small one, warm and real. That night, We had dinner on the floor, pizza boxes, paper plates, half-warm soda, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like we were rebuilding something broken. It felt like we were building something new. You see, losing everything doesn't make you fearless. It makes you aware. You stop chasing highs. You stop gambling peace for a promise of more. You start valuing quiet, the kind that doesn't feel empty. Sometimes I still dream about that old house. I see Dad in the kitchen, Michael in the living room, Mum humming near the window. It's always evening in those dreams, that soft, golden kind of light. And just before I wake up, I hear someone say, "It's okay now." Maybe it is. Michael still walks by that street every once in a while. He says he doesn't look at the red door anymore, just the trees around it. Says they've grown taller, stronger. Maybe that's what we did too. I don't know if he'll ever forgive himself completely, but I've stopped waiting for that day. Because forgiveness isn't always about saying, "It's fine." Sometimes it's about sharing pizza in a half-painted room and realizing you've survived. And that's enough. Hey, if you're still listening, thanks for sticking with me till the end. If this story hit close to home, maybe share it. Because somewhere out there, someone's staring at a screen right now, watching their numbers fall, thinking it's the end. And maybe hearing this will remind them it's not. Not yet. Not ever. So, subscribe if you want to hear more real stories. The kind that break you first, and then quietly, slowly put you back together again.